Yeah.
Welcome to MGO Bucks. Welcome on this beautiful Friday evening. Sports fans, Michigan fans, it might be the big one with Jim Harbaugh. The coach for the San Diego Chargers just got fired. And that, I believe, is one of Jim Harbaugh's dream jobs. So we're going to talk about all that. It's got me a little worried. I don't know if I'm worried or if I'm ready to let Harbaugh just go since he's been flirting with the NFL so much. But we'll talk about that. We're also going to talk about the college football committee. Matt just broke some news to me. The college football committee responded to a letter from Senator Rick Scott of Florida over him writing them a letter about not letting in FSU when they're undefeated. So there might be a little bit of news coming out about that. Matt's going to cover that. And then after that, where I think we're probably going to just talk a little bit about Ohio State recruiting. So there's been Ohio State recruiting's on fire, but the position groups that Ohio State is getting at the top end really is kind of a lot of eye candy, not a lot of meat. So we're going to talk about that. Matt, how's it going tonight?
Doing all right. The wife and daughter are out at a Fluffy concert tonight, so I'm here holding down the fort and ready to talk some football.
Oh, good. I'm glad we're not going to get any random interruptions from family then, I see. Nice. So Jim Harbaugh, Matt. So how do you feel about that? I mean, I felt for a long time that if the Chargers job opened up, I felt like, I don't know why, just felt like that was kind of unique. It's back in California. Seems to have a really, really good situation there for a new coach. To come in and make a real big impact. They've got a quarterback, but the quarterback is young, very talented, but he's not brand new. Harbaugh or a new coach wouldn't have to come in and just completely start over and go through all those growing pains with a new quarterback. So I've thought for a while, if that job opened up, that was probably going to be the one Harbaugh would leave for, assuming that the Chargers want him. I don't know. What are you thinking about that?
Well, it seems like you've been kind of worried about him hurting your recruiting classes over the last few years because he kept flirting with the NFL every year. But your team has been making up for the lack of big names in the recruiting and inconsistent recruiting finishes by really effectively identifying good players that are excellent fits for Michigan and what you guys want to do. So the last 2 years, your team has been surviving and really excelling based on how well they've done in the portal. I mean, you guys have been, there's other teams that have done great by getting like a top quarterback like Penix or Jaden Daniels, but I would say other than not getting that elite quarterback, not that you don't have an elite quarterback, but not making that big splash with the quarterback, you've really hit a lot of areas of need in really crucial spots that have helped your team the last 2 years in the portal that have elevated a top 15 to top 20 recruiting year into, I would say, top 5 to top 3 or whatever. I mean, it's just been fantastic what you guys have done in the portal. We've been able to get a couple good people. I guess our left tackle and our cornerback are both solid portal additions. I think our left tackle didn't even give up a sack this year. He was Simmons was getting a lot of flack for all leading the college football for the last 2 years in false starts, but he didn't give up any sacks. I'm not sure what his run grades were this year, but as a pass blocker, he was great. Igbinosa was fairly good. I mean, he's above average. I think people might think he's a little better than he is because he's very aggressive. He got called for PIs a lot, and he wasn't like amazing or anything, but he was solid. Whereas Michigan, you guys got a linebacker, offensive linemen, tight ends. Like you're just getting all these key positions that are really, and then also, you got a guy who was, an All-American at center last year, and he ended up winning the Remington Award. So, that's as good of a hit as you can get outside of getting like a Heisman guy like Jaden Daniels. But I mean, you guys have been stellar through the portal. And so that's why I wouldn't be as worried about the recruiting. And I think that, with all the success the last 3 years, I think, if Harbaugh can sign a contract. Now, Michigan has tried to get him to sign a contract with a clause stating, I'm not going to, I think it was just for 1 year, right?
Yeah,
Is that right? That he
I
just
think
has
it
to
is
sign a
just for 1
1-year
year.
clause. Give us a 1-year break where you're not going to flirt with the NFL. Just 1 year. If you can do that, we'll make you the highest paid coach in the Big Ten, one of the highest paid coaches in college football. Will he sign that deal?
Yeah, I don't know. This Chargers job just opened up, so I'm not buying it right now. I'm thinking Harbaugh just might leave. I mean, it's going to be a while though, just because he's going to go through the bowl prep and everything. But that's got me worried again too, because the bowl prep in the last few years, you know, they've been in the playoffs 3 years in a row, but they've gone in and lost kind of badly. I mean, not it's not like a huge deal that they lost to Georgia because Georgia was just awesome, but they still shouldn't have got trounced the way they did. Number one, and then
Yeah.
losing to TCU when they should have won, that was inexcusable. And now we've got another like just big glaring like distraction for the whole team and for Harbaugh and the coaches. I mean, you think about the coaches too, like the assistant coaches. They're all thinking, "Oh, Harbaugh's, trying to go to the NFL." What are you thinking if you're an assistant coach? Like, go get another job, right? I'm going to use this time to actually go start calling people I know and figure out, what am I going to do after Harbaugh leaves? And so it's just, I think it probably just throws so much distraction in for a team that's trying to win a national title. It's rough, and now they're going to go play Bama and not even TCU. I think that's real interesting, real interesting. But
Yeah, but you know what though?
asking the
You guys
people
have
in the
been
chat,
doing.
I want to ask everyone out there in the chat, in the comments on this video, what do you think with Harbaugh? Do you think that Harbaugh is going to leave? Do you think he's going to stay? I want to hear everyone's thoughts on that. But yeah, Matt,
Yeah,
go
I
ahead.
mean, I think that I mean, up until the Chargers job opening today, your recruiting has really been picking up, and they're also in on a lot of top transfer portal guys. I've been seeing Michigan as favorites or in the top 3 for a lot of good players, and you know, I'm really interested to see what happens in the next. I mean, I don't know how long the Chargers are going to take to name a coach. Is this going to be something that happens immediately, or are they going to take the off season to figure? I mean, they're not going to wait that long, are they? I
I don't
don't.
know.
I don't follow the NFL as much. I'm not. I can't remember how long it generally takes. Especially when the current season is still going. Do they ever replace someone that quickly? I mean,
Yeah,
obviously, it would have to be until your season is over. I'm
I'd have to
assuming.
go back and look, but I'm pretty sure it goes for a while because the last 2 years, Harbaugh's had no problem going through the interview process.
So
And
at what point was the interview process? That was
I'd
after
have
your
to
season was over,
I'd
right?
have to go back and look. I think it was after the season. It did go into after the season, but also the Chargers job, there's a lot of people that want that job. I mean, not just
Yeah.
because of the location. I think that any coach could probably go in there and make a pretty big impact. Chargers have done terrible this year. They're going to have a high draft pick. They don't need a quarterback. So
Yeah.
just right there, you could start building the team immediately, right in the draft. So yeah, I think it's a really, really awesome situation for any coach. But and speaking to the portal, Michigan has done great in the portal. They're getting some grown men. When you recruit in high school, getting high school boys that have to get into the gym, and they've got to be. It's going to be a year or two at least, for them to get going. And I mean, it's the same thing for all teams. But if you do really good in the portal and you hit gold in the portal, like you said, all of a sudden you've got grown men in there ready to just plug in there and start playing immediately. So it's just like plugging in starters, just plugging them in.
And speaking of that, I think Ohio State might finally have learned their lesson, and instead of having 2 undersized, smaller, fast guys that are great as one of the 2 defensive tackles, you don't want to have both of them undersized against running teams, right? And you need to have, especially on running downs or in late games when you need a run stop, like we did in the fourth quarter of this year, or the second half last year, or any of the time in the game 3 years ago. We need to have some of those big run stoppers, and we're in on one of the top defensive tackles in the country from Michigan State, and we were, I thought, going to be the leader. I think he just visited us this last weekend, and now he's going to Oregon, and so I think Auburn was also visited, but I'm assuming it's going to be between us and Oregon because that's the team with the big money team, but potentially between or I don't know how much money Auburn has in their portal spending, but that's going to be interesting. Hopefully we can land. I think we might be getting both of our defensive tackles back, which would be great, but we still could use that run stuffer.
Yeah, for sure. For sure. So speaking of the portal, do you think Ohio State is going to get a quarterback, or is that ship sailed?
I don't think any ship has sailed. It just seems like the problem is there's so many quarterbacks that keep getting added into this portal like every couple of days. It wasn't, there was a bunch of them went in early, but then like every few days another one comes in. So what is it? The guy from Texas, is that Malik Murphy or something? Is that what his name was? It seems like there's a lot of fire, a lot of smoke around him. I'm fine with throwing someone else in there. I don't think that let's say their budget's probably going to be better spent. If I was the coach, I would be getting some offensive and defensive linemen, some linebackers. That's where I would be putting my money. If I had any left over, I would go for a quarterback just to compete, because you can never have too many players at that position because it's the most important position. But not super worried with two good but inexperienced guys in the roster, and then the third 5-star coming in Aaron Noland. So I'm not super worried, but I would be happy for he has a ton of upside. So he's not like the type of person you would think that would be the ideal fit for Ohio State now, because we would be looking for someone maybe if we have a lot of people returning, which it sounds like a lot of the guys are gonna, I heard Trey Henderson got a 4th round raid, and that's why he's potentially going to be coming back. He hasn't announced that, but that's just the rumor that I heard today. So, if we have a lot of other guys that are going to be coming back, then, we could potentially need, even if Devin Brown is a good quarterback, CJ Stroud lost a game early against Oregon, even though mostly that was the defense's fault. But even an elite quarterback is not going to be perfect in his first few games. Luckily, we don't play Oregon, I think, until the 5th or 6th game next year. So we don't have any hard games early. But still, it's, he's going to have, 4 or 5 games of experience going into a game against Oregon, where we're going to going up against Dylan Gabriel, who's had a million games under his belt. And, that guy's had probably 40 games now between 2 schools. And then Washington just got the Mississippi State quarterback. Did you see that? I just sent that to you earlier. Will Rogers.
Oh, yeah.
So he's the number 2 all-time passer in SEC history, and so he's going to Washington. So Washington and Oregon are both going to have super experienced quarterbacks now.
Good.
And JJ McCarthy might come back, although I'm hearing a lot of reports that he's going to be a potentially top 10 pick. Apparently a lot of the NFL scouts really like what they see with JJ. So I'm hoping that that's the case and you guys get stuck with someone younger and inexperienced, because that's
exactly
going to be a lot better for the rest of us.
Yeah. Well, it's interesting. I kept thinking earlier, looking at that schedule for next year when Ohio State, we've all got to play those Pac-12 teams, Washington, Oregon, USC, UCLA. And I kept feeling better about that, because Caleb Williams is going to the draft. The Oregon's quarterback was going to the draft. Michael Penix going to the draft. We wouldn't have to play against those guys. But now those teams are going to be formidable. If they've got Will Rogers, they've got who's the other guy from Oklahoma you just mentioned? They've got him. Oregon's got him.
Gabriel.
Yeah, Dylan Gabriel. And USC is probably going to get someone in the portal, or, they've got a superstar in the waiting. So that's still going to be hard, real difficult. So, my gosh. But real quick, swinging back to Harbaugh real quick, I wanted to ask one more thing, because the implication with Harbaugh leaving, if he did leave for the Chargers, what should Michigan do? Should they just promote from within? Or do you think they should actually try to go get a big name coach? What's your knee-jerk reaction on that?
That's a tough one, because, Sharon Moore did a good job, really good job, since he in his limited duty there. But it's much easier to just play when someone has already built up the program for you and done everything, and everything's already in place. You don't know if all those other players are going to want to stick around for, your offensive coordinator to be the new head coach, right? So if Sharon Moore becomes head coach, I don't know what his relationship is with the other people there. Are they going to say, okay, this sounds a little bit iffy. I don't know if I want to, hitch my wagon to this guy. I'd rather go get, something and play for someone that's a little bit more proven, and everyone just peace out, and they're all gone. And he has to maybe rebuild. Whereas, like it could be a situation like Ryan Day. So after Urban Meyer left, Ryan Day kept that whole infrastructure for the most part, at least for the first year. And so he had a lot of the same people there. And then, he had to start replacing people after they left to get promotions in other places. Like we lost our defensive coordinator after his first year, and we are still just now getting back. 4 years later, we're finally getting, someone who's got a defense that's almost as good as what we had back in 2019. So it takes time to replace those coordinators sometimes, and we don't know if Sharon Moore can do that. But then if you bring in a new outside coach, you get someone who does have that proven track record, and it's going to be more reliable, but he's most likely then going to bring in a lot of his staff. So is he going to be bringing in people that he works with right now, or is he going to be going all over the place and bringing in a completely new system, bringing in a completely new staff? So it seems like almost definitely if you're bringing in someone from the outside, you're going to have at least a down year, maybe 2 down years, because of just the sheer changeover, because I think Matt Rule is going to be a good coach in Nebraska, but you couldn't really tell that from this year, because it's just, it's just such a big project to come in and take over a team, even if, obviously Nebraska is a different situation because they're not a good team right now. But, Michigan is, you potentially lose a lot of the recruits and a lot of the people in the portal that said they were coming. If you get a new coach, if, Harbaugh leaves, you're going to have a lot of changes just in the recruiting. It's going to be tough for all those people to stick without Harbaugh there. So you have no idea. But I think the best situation for you guys would probably be Sharon Moore is promoted, and then he can somehow convince all the other coaches to stay, run the same system, and then convince all the recruits to stay somehow. But I think you're better off getting the recruits to stay if he's promoted it within versus having someone new come in from the outside who maybe has a different system, and none of those recruits are even the style of offense that they want potentially. That might just completely change things. He might want to have like a more passing style offense like Ryan Day has or something, and then all these recruits are not going to be the style of offensive lineman he wants. The receivers, definitely. He's going to want some different receivers. So, yeah, so I think Sharon Moore is probably, I talk it out, I think he's the choice.
Yeah, I agree. I think Sharon Moore would be my number one choice. I mean, he probably would have been my number one even if he hadn't been in the situation where he had to beat Ohio State without Jim Harbaugh on the sidelines. That just solidified it for me. But also we've got this we've got the sign stealing scandal to deal with too. We don't know what the NCAA is going to do. I mean, I'm hoping it's not going to be much, time served basically. But
or it could just be like
hard.
It could be mostly a punishment for Harbaugh. Like if it's a show cause for Harbaugh, hopefully then it wouldn't be like also your offensive and defensive coordinators. Maybe it's just Harbaugh. And if that's the case, then you would maybe have like a few, like maybe you'll lose a few scholarships for a couple of years, like Ohio State did. We lost like, three scholarships a year for 3 years or something minor.
Yeah. Well, a new coach is going to want to know that though. A new coach isn't going to come in without actually knowing what is going to be the punishment and can I deal with that when I get there. So that's looming over Michigan right now. So if you could get, it would just be much better to get Sharon Moore and then for him to keep the structure. Now, I don't know what would happen with Jesse Minter though. Jesse Minter, the defensive coordinator, would probably, Jim Harbaugh might take him with him. I mean, he might actually take him.
That's the other issue. That's what I was saying. Like, it's tough. Like, like I said, Ryan Day got to keep the entire structure there, at least for the first year. So we don't know, like you said, is Harbaugh going to be taking these people or not?
Yeah, I'm sure he probably would want to take everyone with the success he's had. But he's got a huge network of people, though. So you never know what would happen. I'm sure Sharon would stay at Michigan if he was going to be the head coach versus go be an offensive coordinator in the NFL. But Jesse Minter's another one. That's another story. If I was Jim Harbaugh, I'd be taking him with me. But I mean, for that, yeah. So I'm a little scared about the Chargers right now, though. I'll tell you that.
Yeah, I
That
would
is
definitely be
actually
worried.
big time.
That's a premier job.
Yeah, for sure. And to be honest, I'm ready for Harbaugh to just either sign a big ass contract where he's got a huge buyout clause, or just go, just get off the pot. Seriously, I mean,
Yeah.
I'm sick of dealing with it and thinking about it every single year. And
Well, I would say the
Michigan
funny.
is they're such wusses for dealing with it. I know they're in a really bad position, bad and good, because they're winning. The coach is winning, so you can't just get rid of him. But it's also a bad position because he's embarrassing them like right in front of their faces by going and interviewing and then saying, "Nah, I think I'll just come back to you guys." So they've got to stand up to Harbaugh this year. They've got to have a go or no go.
Yeah, so it's interesting. I'll be curious. I will say I have been having a lot of fun with the people on Twitter/X with this particular subject, because right when all this stuff happened, within like a week, everyone was sort of clamoring for Harbaugh to re-sign that big contract that they were offering him. It was on the table, and then like within a few days of that, some more news came out. I think that's when your assistant coach got fired, and then the contract was off the table, and then
Yeah,
everyone was upset for a while, and then now, like, this was it last week or the beginning of this week, they said that the news came out where he has a new contract on the table, but it has that clause in there where it's requiring him to not interview with the NFL. I don't even think it said that he couldn't take a position if offered, but he couldn't interview for any
yeah,
positions that opened. I think that's what the clause said.
yeah. It was something weird. Like he couldn't do it publicly or something. Like maybe his
Yeah.
back
And so when
channels
that came
were
out,
blocked.
like all the Michigan fans on Twitter were all excited, and they're like, Harbaugh, bet, he's back. He's going to be signing
Hey,
imminent extension. And then days go by now, and I'm like, he hasn't signed it, guys. What's going
yeah.
on?
You know what's going on is he's waiting to see what's opening up in the NFL.
Yeah.
Is what he's waiting
And
for.
I bet
He
I bet
wants
he
to
was
see
like
what
this.
his
He
options
was he
are.
was watching that Chargers game last night, and he was like, "Dang."
Yeah, exactly. I mean, think about what you could do. He's going to have money. He's going to be able to get a high draft pick. I mean, what would you go for if you were the Chargers? I don't really know that much
Yeah.
about them, but seems like defense might be something they may want to go for.
Yeah. I mean, I didn't get to watch much of that game yesterday, but I know, like, there was definitely, I'm pretty sure there was some defensive touchdowns and everything. So, and their quarterback was fumbling because they had the backup
Back up.
quarterback who's never played before. So that's always a disaster. But you have like a unbelievable quarterback, and you have Keenan Allen at receiver. They have some
Mhm.
other young receivers that are good too. They're just coming back off injury, so they have some good young talent. I'm sure they need plenty of positional help if they're losing that bad. But it's a lot easier when you have at least a quarterback to work around and some skill
Yeah,
talent.
a quarterback that's not a complete and total rookie. Yeah,
Yeah,
that's one of the reasons I think it'll be interesting and good for Harbaugh, because I think Harbaugh is like one of those types of coaches. If I heard right, he's not a huge fan of like rookie quarterbacks in the NFL. So again, that just plays into why this is just such a good situation for him, and this could be it. But anyway, switching subjects a little bit, I wanted to talk about what you kind of sprinkled in here just right before this about the college football committee sending that letter back to Senator Rick Scott of Florida, because Rick Scott, I believe, sent a letter to the committee, kind of a nasty gram, right, about
yeah.
leaving Florida State out of the playoffs. So why don't you cover that and what you know about that? Because that's real
All right,
interesting.
and so the thing that I want to get to first. So the most important thing that I think, especially Florida State fans, are leaving out when they're, writing angry tweets at everyone about the situation that their team is in right now. Okay, so the playoff committee is making their decision based off a protocol. Okay, so what do we know about the protocol, right? So the protocol, it was written by the conference commissioners, university presidents, and athletic directors who founded the college football playoff 11 years ago. They have rules in the document that they have to follow. And in the letter that they replied to Senator Scott today, they said that their decision to put FSU fifth or drop them to fifth. But as you know, as we had said previously, if they were going to do it, that's fine. But they should have done it when Travis was hurt, not at the end, which makes no sense. And of course, they didn't address that at all. But what they did say was the two primary reasons were that the protocol requires the committee to take into consideration unavailability of key players that may affect the team's performance during the postseason. Simply put, Florida State is not the same team without its star quarterback. That caused the committee to believe that there were indeed 4 teams that should rank higher than FSU. Again, we had talked about this in the past. We both disagree. If they're going to go by that standard, then they should probably be 8th or 9th, not 5th. So that again doesn't make sense. So it should have happened when Travis was hurt. And then also, I think they some of the comments that the people were interviewed on the committee had said to Heather Dinich, they were watching that first half. It was really bad. There was no offense at all. I don't think there was hardly any points in that first half in their conference championship game. And then I think in the second half, they got some more points, but their quarterback only had 55 yards passing. But that's not the quarterback that was going to be playing in the championship or in the playoffs. It would have been the backup quarterback who was a much better player. So not many teams are going to have a good backup quarterback, and almost nobody has a good third string quarterback outside of Ohio State and Cardale Jones back in 2014. That's really rare. Okay. And anyway, the second thing that they put on there, this is the one that I take a strong issue with. So they said that the FSU strength of schedule was not as strong as the 4 teams that were ranked ahead of them. As I'm sure you're aware, strength of schedule is a key metric the committee takes into consideration. If being undefeated without regard to a team's strength of schedule was part of our protocol, other universities with undefeated records would have routinely been considered for the playoff. There have been eight, counting Florida State, undefeated teams that did not make the playoff. While this is the first year such a team was from a so-called Power 5 conference, strength of schedule remains a crucial factor. And tell me if you remember this. They always put the chart up there on the graphic for the playoff committee when they're doing when they're talking between like 4 teams and they're showing the different things that the teams are good at. They don't usually ever talk about, like in the past years, I remember that they would talk about offenses, defenses, rankings and stuff like that. But now it's always like their record, their top 25 wins, their strength of schedule. And what was the other one that they put in there? Do you remember?
No, go ahead.
Strength of record. So strength of record was the thing. I noticed the strength of record is not getting mentioned here. You know why? Because Florida State has the number 3 strength of record.
Of course they do.
Strength of record shows how well you did against your schedule. So you can have a weak schedule, but how well you did against that schedule compared to how other teams have done against those teams. So that way it accounts for how because you could still play a bad team. So Michigan most of the year had a bad strength of schedule too. Not like Florida State's, which was 55. But theirs got better as the year went on. But you guys did really well against your strength of record was really high because you did really well against everyone you played. So FSU had a really good strength of record. That was not something that was addressed here in this letter. It was also something they showed every week when they were picking the teams and ranking them, but they didn't leave that in when they made the final call. That was not one of the things that they just took it out that last week. Completely forgot to talk about it. They just forgot.
Yeah.
Why do you think they forgot that, Nate?
They're all in on it too. And I think all the networks, even non-ESPN networks, are sort of in on that because they all understand why it happened. And it was because of ratings, and it's because of revenue coming in from advertising, and that drives the whole bus. And so even CBS, Fox, all those guys, and maybe they did and I just missed it, but I never actually heard them make the case that you made and that I made and that some other people have made, that they didn't drop Florida State immediately. They didn't drop it as soon as the quarterback got injured. They waited until the last week. I mean, weeks after.
That's what made it. That's what because I think selfishly, I think they wanted them in there as long as Georgia beat Alabama. That's why they did that. I think that they would have, because I mean, for ratings wise, they still would have wanted the undefeated team. And Florida State's a big name. They haven't been in the playoffs in a while. And so that's a team that they wanted. They just didn't want them as much as Alabama. Right.
Yeah.
So
exactly. It's because then they had to make a choice between Saban and Florida State, and they couldn't do it. Yeah. Totally fraudulent. But yeah, absolutely crazy. Anyway, let's wrap it up on that one. Hope everyone has a good night. Thanks everyone for joining us. Please like and subscribe to the channel. That would help us out a great deal. Everyone have a great night. Have a great holiday, and we'll talk to you all soon.
OH.
Go Blue.